Okay, boys and girls, got something truly special for you today. I've just sat down in an interview that's all about big world thinking, charts, with none other than the author of this book, The Pro Retail Trader by Steve Ruffley. Now, Steve's not just about charts. For all what he doesn't know about charts, you can write on the back of a postage stamp. He's also about how the world works, what drives the markets, what the big thinking is, what the narrative of the world is. And when you listen to him, he really does talk some sense. Now, this is an unedited, no holds barred chat. So buckle up and let's jump straight into this. Well, hello, boys and girls. As I said in the intro, very special guest, the man, the myth, Mr. Steve Ruffley. How are you doing, Steve?
I'm good, mate. How are you doing?
I'm living the dream as always. Well, or the nightmare, depending on which way you want to look at it. And tonight, sort of, I guess that's the thing, living the dream or living the nightmare, the big picture of the world. And I'm going to pull a quote out of your book, right? And if anybody hasn't bought this book, you really want to have a look at it because it'll show trading in a completely different light. You know, because most of the time it's just, where do you get in? What's your technical analysis? How do I make money? I would say this book is more what your mind thought is as to how to make money, not the process of technical. Because I think in the book, it's 80% mindset, 20% technical somewhere in it. But there's a quote, and it's a quote I forgot. And one thing that really resonated with me with this is there is a lot of popular culture quotes in here. But you missed a trick, Steve. I've got to say this, you missed a trick, right? Because when you touch on your fibs, and we all know we like fibs, I was waiting for Al Pacino to go, say hello to my little friend, and then into the fibs. And it weren't there. And I was gutted because Rocky was in there and Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
The Muhammad Ali quote, I'll kind of paraphrase it, but it's a man in his 50s or a man in his 50s who thinks the same as a man in his 20s has wasted 30 years of his life.
Yep.
That is a great quote because it means they haven't moved forward. And if you're not moving forward in the big world, how on earth can you see what the big world picture is?
Yeah, I mean, I thought a lot about it. You know, it took a long time to put that book together because obviously the first book, you know, I know you read that and all the good stuff was in it. The fibs, anyone could follow a fib, 50% retracement. And it's like, oh, wow, it works. And it's just like, yeah, we've cracked trading. But the second book was more about my journey into who I was, getting older, getting wiser. I don't know. Just getting more experience.
You and me. I mean, look at the state of us.
Well, we're daft as a pair of brushes, mate. But you know, it's we're daft in our own way. But I think a lot of it is you're right. It's more about a journey. It's more about looking inside yourself and taking it to the next. I don't want to use these kind of cliched phrases, but I think what I was trying to say is a lot of people get stuck in this mindset that trading is about one system. It's about one piece of technical analysis, or tying that in with some fundamentals. There's one way to make money. There's lots of ways to make money, but there's also lots of other ways to lose money. What this is trying to make you understand is who you are, because who you are is the most difficult thing to put into the markets. I believe, kind of, we all have our own strengths and weaknesses. We all have our own kind of interpretations on everything from technicals to fundamentals, but tapping into your own kind of, emotions and how you not only control the emotions, or maybe the way I do it, harness emotions when especially scalping and trading kind of large size, short periods of time. It's how you deal with that. And you can only get that from experience. So it was really just trying to give some experience, pass that knowledge on. And generally, as you know, I'm very straight talking here, not giving a fuck what everyone else says.
Oh, and that's the right.
I don't give a shit what any other trader, and a technical analysis, fundamental analysis, expert, whatever says. I'm just telling you how I found it. And if people found that useful, good. If they don't, do the exact opposite of what I say. I could only tell people what I know to be true from what I've done. And it was trying to be warts and all. I'm not trying to paint a picture of the best trader in the world. I say I'm not. It took me a long time to figure out, kind of the best way to trade. I've definitely blown up accounts. And yeah, it's I am the trader, not that I wanted to be. I'm the trader I had to settle to be. And that's how I feel about trading. When in my younger days, mate, I was going to be the flipper. I was going to be Braveheart. The guys off the floor. I was going to be the next Warren Buffett. I had my nickname picked out and everything. Didn't quite turn out that way, but I've still done all right. So when you aim high, okay, and you come here, you're still doing better than people that never tried or never gave it that initial commitment. So yeah, that's what I tried to portray in it. Anyway, like I said, this isn't a sales pitch for the book, mate.
No,
It's
no,
just
no, no. But
I'm just telling you how I kind of my thought process.
But that leans into kind of a big picture thinking of, all right, Steve Ruffley was setting out to be ex-trader, but he didn't get there and he did okay. Did you do okay because you're self-disciplined and you were driven to get there? Or was it because of the way you were trained? Because as a floor trader and a retail trader, the training, let's be honest, they're going to be completely different.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. That's, again, that's a great question. The training's only one part of it, because the training, as I said in the book, the training teaches a lot of, kind of nice keywords and nice, kind of framework, but it doesn't teach you how to make money. It doesn't teach you how the business skills or the life skills of dealing with lots of money quickly, or indeed losing lots of money quickly. It teaches you by being in that environment a lot of motivation. A lot of guys that have already made it and done very well. People that you'd like to rub shoulders with, have a drink with. The guys that are doing what you want to do. But it doesn't teach you the momentum of how to keep going when things are good. To keep your money, how things are going, to build it back when things are bad. So it was a lot of kind of baptism of fire stuff. And, there were lots of people that went through these grad programs that I was on, that didn't make it. And there was only a handful of people that did. You have to remember, like, to buy yourself out of the Revco contract I was in, yeah, you had to pay them back £250,000. That's going back to when £250,000 was something.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of people that didn't make it, and a lot of people that, went on to different things, left from trading, did different things. But yeah, the ones that did make it through that process went to be on some of the best day traders that I know. People that you will never have heard of, the people that won't have to write books, the people that have been doing this for as long as I have, but were making, millions of pounds a week back when, I was sat next to them.
I bet you they were quiet. I'll tell you for why.
Yeah.
I used to do a lot of martial arts as a kid. I did it into my early 20s, and I did competition fighting. Now, the one that was given at this, and sort of all wary, they never won. But the guy who sat in the corner that was pretty quiet and was really mega focused, you get in the ring with him, he knocks 7 bells out of you.
Yep.
And then he sits down, and it's as if it's never happened.
You're exactly right, Gary. But it's the people that are comfortable in their own thoughts. Don't get me wrong. There were lots of people that came from the floor, that would stand up, spit at the screens, punch the screen, shout. They were still making big money. But yeah, well, as it progressed from the kind of the pit days to the electronic days, I'm showing my age now. But the guys that grew up just purely on the screen, there was no aggression benefit.
Yeah.
There was no benefit to be kind of being hyper aggressive, because you didn't have that pit environment. So yeah, you're exactly right. The guys that were very, confident in themselves and quiet and understated, they're the ones that are sat with, 2,000 euro lots short when the market's rallying, averaging in, being 100 and 200,000 quid offside, and then finishing the day 500,000 and just leaving the office like nothing had happened. So you're right. It's a lot about that inner dialogue, monologue you can have for yourself, the inner confidence, and controlling emotions. The way that I look at it is harnessing your emotions. I think people, and that's a distinction I tried to make before as well in the second book, was a lot of talk about investing. People think that when they're trading, they're really investing. So you put a trade on, you put a stop loss on, you take profit, and you walk away for a week. Well, that's short-term investing for me. You know, what I'm talking about is pure day trading, using liquidity, market movement, being in and out, you know, being a bit more kind of focused on price action. You know, I can buy and sell, you know, a couple of hundred lots, and you won't even see that move in the charts because the market will go from here to here or here to here, whereas I'm involved in somewhere here based upon, you know, how I've seen the movement of the market. So there's a big distinction between controlling your emotions and investing long-term sense and controlling your emotions in a very short-term day trading intraday sense. So there's lots of distinctions that I tried to make that made it relevant to what I do, not what people think I do.
And what sways you when you're doing that? Because I'm predominantly a day trader, right? That's what I do. So I try to cut out as much noise as I can. So
Yep.
when I look at, say, mainstream media, I kind of take it with a pinch of salt. I trade an aftermath rather than predictive. So I'm reactive rather than predictive.
Yep.
How much of sort of the outside noise are you paying attention to when you're in the moment? Or are you just focused clearly on the chart? Or are you looking at a world global thinking like, well, gold's mega high at the moment. Why is it high? Is the fear there? If there's fear there, why is the fear? And then you go down through the military and various conflicts in the world and then try and put a narrative together of world thinking. But really, does that affect the next 10 minutes?
No.
Yeah. So
it's a good question though, and it deserves a bit more kind of explaining from my point. So the first thing is, okay, the mainstream media, yes, I read everything. Everything that the mainstream media puts out, you might take it with a pinch of salt, I take it with a fucking bucket. You know, we've got the mainstream media is narrative, is trying to push traders in a direction, the world in a direction. It's all pre-planned. I don't want to go tinfoil hat stuff, but it's very obvious that the mainstream media has an agenda that it's trying to achieve, which is being filtered through, you know, kind of political policy and being governed by the money that, you know, kind of, you know, donates to these parties, you know. So that's one thing in itself. Okay. So nothing that happens in the markets, the mainstream media, is going to affect the next 10 minutes. Okay. So it will affect the overall trend. There are only certain things that will affect the next 10 minutes, and that's big news events. So things are unexpected. Now, that could be economic data that's unexpected, but like yourself, from bitter experience, I only trade the aftermath too. I've been burnt trying to trade the figure. That comes onto the financial side of the equivalent of mainstream media and manipulation narrative type thing. So, yes, going back to things like news events, I've made six figures in a couple of hours in gold when Russia, you know, invaded Ukraine, because that was not necessarily priced in, but it was a news event that was going to change the market almost instantly. Now, those things don't happen very often; they're few and far between, but they do happen. So, from a day trader perspective, that's when you go all in. That's when you know something's going to shift the market, and you have a 99% kind of conviction rate that a product will do a certain thing. Now, usually, I would have sold stocks. Stocks didn't really do much, but you know, this time, you know, bought gold, and you know that worked out, you know, very well. But that's, as I say, you know, that's a once a year, once a couple of year trade. So news will affect the market if it's not priced in, it's not expected, and it's pure new news. The news, the narrative, will filter through the markets over a period of time. And no, it's not what I put any of my short-term trades on. I don't base any of it on news. Now, you can't get away from the narrative. You know, you can't get away from the sentiment. You have to price that into, you know, into your kind of thinking. Now, this happened last Friday. I was kind of anticipating a bit of sell-off in the dollar yen, anticipating that, you know, the Fed are pricing in, or the market are pricing in 99% chance of some sort of rate cut. So 25 dollar's going to go down. If you get 50, it's going to go down. If Trump gets his mega cut, could be, you know, a full basis point. You know, definitely going to go down. Or the narrative is we're definitely getting a cut, 99%. We hold, wait for more data. Then what happens? Or they increase 25. So there's lots of things that can say, yes, technically, you know, on when I was looking at the markets on Friday, I had a little short and actually got out for a small loss, then the market dumped. That's fine. You know, these things happen. But that was a kind of a combination of what's coming up And that's where it's very difficult, you see, because being a short-term trader, I could have put a relatively small trade on, put a stop in, left it for 3 days, and it had gone 300-400 points.
Yeah.
But that's not the way I trade. So I missed that, didn't do it. So like yourself, I'll probably wait for the aftermath of the the FOMC and scalp it, because I'm not an investor. I'm not a long-term trader. I'm not going to trade for more than 8 hours. And yes, did I miss money? Did I miss an opportunity? Yes, but that's fine. You have to be able to be comfortable that you've missed things, even though you were right. Doesn't
I think
matter.
that's where retail falls down, because they would look at that and they'll feel devastated they've missed the move. And then they'll feel, I want to get it back. So they'll jump at the market because of your emotional trigger. Whereas, like what you've just said is, well, I missed it.
Yeah, that's just years and years and years of experience. Yeah, well, whatever. But what's more important is the narrative. It's the retail mindset, the behavior, like you said, the chasing. So what they'll do is you'll get your 25 basis point on the FOMC. You'll jump in and they'll go up 100 points, and you'll lose even more money. Then they'll go down, and they'll go down again. But you'll miss that move because you've already been caught on the fake out move. And that's how the more and more information. It's the theory of big numbers and things like that. The things I've talked about in the book. It's very difficult to predict what one big whale will do, but it's very easy to predict what, kind of hundreds of thousands or maybe millions of people will do with enough data. And that's the way we're going in the world. There's so much data, emphasis on data, that the smart boffins, the Zuckerbergs, the Musks, the Thiel, all these kind of people with enough data, they can make, calculated decisions with enough money. They can't really lose. They can't position themselves. And these are the things that I, start talking about. And I started talking about it years ago. And it takes people quite a while. I'm not some Nostradamus or some genius. I'm just a bloke from Bolton. But I follow patterns. I follow trends. That's what I do. And I'm good at that. So I talked a lot about the data not making sense. I started writing my second book 3 odd years ago. The non-farm payroll didn't make sense. The numbers were manipulated and sometimes fake, or kind of skewed to, part-time roles, government employees, etc., etc., etc. I wrote it and I had it published before even people had picked up on this. Then the last 2 or 3 months, all you hear about is, well, we just had this fucking revision, by the Bureau of Labour Statistics, and they've revised jobs down by 910,000. Where did that come from? Why is nobody saying, well, hold on, that's not real, that's fake? Yeah. But I've been saying it for 2 years to people like, what do you know, Steve? Whatever. And we're getting to the stage where we're like China. I said something the other day that people didn't get. We'll soon be living in an economy that's like Japan, not eating like they are in North Korea, and being credit score controlled like they are in China. So the West is kind of taking this view of Russia bad, China bad. But yeah, we'll have the oligarchs like we do in Russia. Yeah, we'll have all that. We'll have your tech oligarchs. That's great. They can have all the money and control. We can have the president that runs democracy, but doesn't really run democracy. Does what he wants with executive orders. And we can have the control like China, because that's where we're heading with all this information. We can control the population. So we demonize, the kind of countries that we go to war with. And really, we're having our own agenda to kind of end up like them anyway. I mean, we're heading down that US path, as Japan had. I don't know the exact stats. I'd have to check, but we look at the kind of the manipulation of the Japanese stock market. I think 70+% is owned by the government, and they've got zombie corporations. And you look at the debt bond buying program, and everyone talks about the reverse carry trade. We haven't seen the full extent of that yet. So when you talk about the bigger picture stuff, the global stuff, it all kind of starts to make sense when you look, and follow the money, which has really lost all its meaning for most people. They don't really understand what that means. But anyway, when you follow the kind of political agendas, wars, and policies that are changing, we're really starting to kind of catch up with, kind of how the rest of the world controls its population, and it's coming. And the control comes through the stock markets. When Trump talks about, taking the government taking a stake in Nevada, what's that? How's that a thing? Why is nobody talking really about that? How's that a good thing? We start nationalizing the stock market. He talks about nationalizing Freddie and Fannie Mae. So what we're going to do? Bail out every homeowner in the US. Just kind of make more ETFs. Make more debt upon more debt upon more debt, And as long as the stock market's going up, people think they're making money, it's fine. So when you talk about the real bigger picture, mate, where do you stop? Where do you stop?
I don't know, because like you say, you put your tin hat on the way you go, because in the UK, I know you're on the other side of the planet now, but we feel like that because they're talking about sort of electronic IDs and you've got to have this. Is this the start of the big picture, what you're talking about, that us as mere mortals would see?
Yeah, but it's just patterns, mate. You know, like these things exist. You know, they exist in China, and you know, we're talking more about, you know, kind of. And I started talking about this because I've got shit to lose, mate. You know what I mean? It's like I came to New Zealand because I wanted to be left the fuck alone. You know, I've got money. I want my freedom. I don't want to be told what to do by any fucker. Been like that since I was about 6. So you know what I mean? It's like it's long ingrained in me. You know, I'll pay my, you know, my tax, and you know, I'll contribute to society where I want, but I just want to be left alone. So I don't want to be tracked. I don't want to be, you know, kind of down the offie and goes like beep. You know, you've had your 12 coronas for the week. You can't have any more. You know, or like if you have that, your health insurance will automatically go up. And people laugh and joke about it, but you know, what do you think Pete and Thiel and Palantir are doing? What do you think Musk was doing? Getting all the kind of data from, you know, Social Security and stuff. You know, people can put their head in the sands and say it isn't coming, but these things and agendas have been talked about for a long, long time. And you know, I've worked with politicians and councillors over in New Zealand to try and have the digital ID, you know, kind of read in Parliament and rejected. So not that I'm just like sat here flapping my fucking gums on Twitter about it. You know, I'm sticking some cash behind it and doing some things myself. But once you hit these you know, these institutions, powers, and governments, half the time they don't really know what you're talking about, which is terrifying. That just shows the puppets, and the other half of it is it's kind of we'll deal with it when we get to that, and that's the whole point. When you deal to it when you get to it, it's already too late. You know, I'm this side of the world, mate. So you start looking at what's happening in Australia. You know, they've got their digital ID for kind of the internet coming in. They call it e-Karen. So you have to use facial recognition to open your social media. Yeah, well, again, these things are coming. And we look at places like Australia, you know, the migration they've had has been huge. 50%, over 50% of the population now in Australia rely on the government for their source of income, either being their employer or from benefits. So there's lots of ways they can slip this in and this control in just by saying, well, you can't have your benefits if you don't get this. You can't have your government job if you don't get this. That's, you know, half the population. So the other half are going to go, well, we're going to have to join in and get it, or, you know, we're not going to be able to be involved in society. And that's the way things work. So I think we're kind of digressing away from the kind of trading side of it. You know, there's lots of things that I put in the book from that perspective, just to show that when you follow patterns and you follow trends and you follow kind of bigger agendas, you know, things are happening, things are told to you. And what's the most difficult thing is that I think you're seeing in the UK, and you mentioned it before we came on air, was this both sides of you know, the narrative from the mainstream media and reality, and how that really works. The way I see things, you know, like we talked about this march in London, where it was reported maybe 110,000 people. Tommy Robinson was saying it's 3 million people. It's probably somewhere in between. Yeah. But why just put a low number on it? Why try and discredit it? And what you're seeing happening in the media, mainstream media, and politicians is you have both sides of the narrative now. So you take something fucking stupid, like, I don't know, taxing, taxing the rich, which really means taxing anyone with property. So capital gains on your main house, okay? Don't know what it's worth. We'll make a value on it, and you pay tax on it. That's stupid. Then you get Gary Stevenson saying he's one side of the narrative. Tax the rich and we'll fix it. Then you get other politicians saying, oh, well, you know, we should tax everybody because that's fairer. Once you bring something stupid like taxing, you know, the home as an asset of ordinary people and making them pay tax on something they've already paid series of tax on. Once you get both sides of the argument, at least they're talking about it and you can make it real. This is what's happening with everything stupid in the world right now. You have far left, far right, and just normal people in the middle saying, here's an idea, stop spending money, leave us the fuck alone. No, let's do this, let's do that. But as soon as you argue about it, it makes it real, and once it's real, it can happen. Just like Donald Trump becoming president. At first, everyone thought it was a joke. It would never happen. But then you start talking about it, oh, well, actually, it'd be really bad. Oh, actually, it'd be really good. The more you talk about it, then it becomes real, and then it becomes a reality. And that's what I see happening with lots of things like this digital ID, credit score, central bank digital currency. Once you start talking about it, it becomes real. If everyone said, no, that's nuts. I don't want that. I want to keep my cash. I want to be able to go to a shop and pay for cash. I don't want to be tracked. Then people, it wouldn't be part of the conversation, but it is. And this is why, that filters through into the kind of the mainstream media equivalent of financial news. Your Bloomberg, your Reuters, and that kind of stuff. Now, I've written for Bloomberg, Reuters, Financial Times, all that kind of stuff. I've been quoted. I wouldn't shit on them, if they paid me these days, because they wouldn't take my opinion because I have an opinion. They want me to say something that fit in with our narrative. Well, I want to do that. I want to say what I want to say, what I believe, what I think is what I should be telling people. So, and that's what we have. We have the whole institution of finance telling you, hey, the stock market's strongest, the best it's ever been. Trump's economy is amazing. Oh, inflation, it's coming down. Mortgage rates are coming down. The biggest drop in 6 months, 0.5% or 0.15%. Wow, that's a massive drop. Yeah, when you put the rates up the fastest point in history. But it's all going to get fixed. We're going to pay off the national debt with Bitcoin. We're going to do golden visas and charge people $1 million a time, wipe it off that way. But meanwhile, the debt keeps cutting up, mate. Yeah, don't worry. Tariffs will sort that out. You won't pay for tariffs either. What the fuck? What you mean you won't pay for tariffs? No, the other country pays for tariffs. Nah, it doesn't work like that. Yeah, it does. It does. It's all fine, mate. Everything's great. Your 401k safe. Donald's got it. They're out of the deal. It's all fine. And meanwhile, someone that's done this stuff for 20 years going, what? People are buying this. And then you buy the stock market. Because if you try not, every dip gets bought up by retail that are brainwashed. And, the money that's always been long is long anyway and just laughing. You know what I mean? Like, this is just the way it is. So you've got to play into the narrative of what they're saying and go with it. And then, kind of turn on the narrative when everybody's, mostly exposed. And, that's it, unfortunately. If you want to bring news into your trading or the bigger picture stuff, you've got to understand that, news and narrative, information narrative, are both powerful, forces that will move the market, but they're not designed to necessarily help you trade or help you make money. So you've got to take it with a big pinch of salt or not trade it at all. And that's why a lot of people go back to technical trading and, put stops in because they can only trade a system that's completely regimented. And there's also nothing wrong with that either, But as I say, it's either you're a fundamental trader or a technical trader. It's not 50-50 like in the first book. It's 80-20. You're 80% news fundamentals and 20% technicals. Or again, you have to be some sort of hybrid trader that could just trade movement day to day, or you have to be very regimented with stops and do keep your 1 or 2% very tight, kind of risk parameters. Because if you're right, you could be very right. If you're wrong, you could be extremely wrong. So for someone like me, even I've had to tone my size down, and even I've had to kind of think about, maybe even holding trades for longer rather than the kind of quick in and out scalps that I used to do. Because there's very little, if no margin for error. You can not really be wrong. So that's just a different how the markets have evolved. That's just a different point of understanding the cycles of markets, how markets change, how you have to adapt as a trader. If you don't adapt, you die. Okay? So we all know that. So nothing ever works forever. All again, for my strategy, I can simply put size down, increase time in trades. So I don't change anything else apart from that. For other traders, yes, they might have to trade how they completely see the markets in their entirety. But as I say, I'm not here to tell people that I have all the answers or I know how to trade better than they do. I'm just trying to say people have to identify that we're definitely shifting how markets are trading and adjust accordingly, for their own understanding.
I mean, ultimately, I mean, a retail trader, I mean, listen to this. I mean, we put your Duracell batteries in and off you went.
Yeah.
But what you're doing is right. Because if there is a greater narrative and it's pushing the market in a singular direction,
yep.
Well, common sense tells you to go with that direction, surely.
Well, how do you sell stocks? You know, how do you sell stocks? You know, we're you know the highest price per earnings since the 2008 dot-com bubble. I think the highest in history. I think we are now since the Great Depression or something. You know, again, it's all you can pick out the stats that suit your own personal narrative. You know, um, but you know, you wait for that one big day when it crashes, and you know you make 7, 8 figures, or you keep buying it and chipping away. But at the end of the day, you know, it's very hard to go against, you know, markets that have no reasoning apart from everything's fine going up. You know, there's nothing, there's no levels up there. You know,
No, there
there's
isn't. And
nothing
that's kind
stopping
of
it.
what I'm driving at, because
Yeah, so you have to go with the herd until the herd runs out of steam and something either fundamentally changes, technically a decision point is made, or more importantly, the bigger agenda, bigger picture stuff is when the guys that have all the money decide that they're going to go short, and you know the S&P 500 becomes the S&P 100. You know, we wipe out a huge tranche of industry that we no longer need.
I mean, but
Maybe.
that's another thing. I mean, I'm not sure whether this is the right way of looking at it. And one thing that I do know, you're an economist, so you can see what the world thinking is. Now, when I was sort of started in this game, I was a forward purchaser, and I was tracking the pound against the dollar. Basically, I couldn't care less about the exchange rate. I was wanting to buy a container in Asia, right? But if I got the exchange rate, I was right. So that was my way of thinking of things. Now, that also gets you to start thinking about S&P 500 and the companies that are inside it. Now, when I started, it was things like Walmart.
Yep.
It was UPS, FedEx, you know, service industry, if you like.
Yep.
Now it's NVIDIA. The profit margins between the two are completely different. So you've got sort of Walmart operating on very low net profits.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got electronics companies, the Apples of this world, massive profits. Is that not a driver as to why it's keeping it so high? Because the Magnificent Seven's changed.
Well, I mean, it's changed the complete, you know, outlook for the markets. You know, we're relying on, you know, things like Nvidia that basically came out of nowhere that's selling AI chips to parties undisclosed, making record amounts of paper profit that no one can prove. And it's just like, yeah, but you've concentrated, you know, the exposure in 7 companies. You know what I don't know the exact figure, but what is it? Is it 39% or something? 39% is condensed in those 7 companies. And it's kind of like that's fine to a point, but then that makes the rest of the companies irrelevant.
Yeah.
And if one thing happens to one of those 7, then maybe the 6 survive, and then the rest below it get crushed as well. I mean, the concentration of anything globally isn't good for competition. There's no competition between stocks anymore. You know, I don't really, you know, you might as well, you know, it's like football terms. You know, take all the best teams of, you know, the Serie A, Bundesliga, you know, Premiership out and put them in one of their own little champ. They tried to do that. Does that make football any better? No, it just makes it more elitist. It makes it more controlled. You know, other people don't and won't ever get access to that. You know, we see it in everything. You know, like I see it over here in New Zealand in the supermarkets. We've basically got 2 distributors and 3 supermarket chains, so they could charge whatever they want. You know, New Zealand produces enough food for 30 million people. There's only 5 million people, but a leg of lamb over here is probably cheaper in Morrison's back in home. You know, so it's all this concentration the world over, and that's what we're seeing. It's an element of control. That's why it all ties in for me. You know, we're consolidating all the big, you know, kind of. That's why we see these crazy moves in commodities. You know, sorry, in orange juice, in coffee, in chocolate. You know, the big, you know, drop in lumber. You know, we're seeing all the commodities, how things are built, then how they're kind of manufactured, how they're distributed, and how they're sold. You know, that pyramid is getting more and more condensed. So we're not we're not customers anymore. We're consumers. We have less options, and this is why you can't, you know, trust things like inflation data, because you know inflation. When you look at the Fed, oh, it's down to, you know, the 2% target. This kind of shit. It's been above, you know, the target for 52 weeks, so it's gone up. So inflation's running about 60-70% plus on some things, even more on other things. But just, you know, you look at it a month-to-month basis, it's still going up. You'd have to have deflation and -2%, and it's already got up 10%. So, you know what I mean? It's kind of, if you don't have an option to shop anywhere else or buy anything else, it's not that inflation data is as manipulated as the jobs data, I don't think. But it's also, it doesn't matter. If you can't go and get your product or what you need from somewhere else, what does an inflation data mean anyway? It's just another way for the policymakers and Trump to say, well, inflation's under control, so we'll put interest rates down. Well, it's more about servicing the huge national debt. It's got anything to do with inflation. And just because interest rates might come down by 2.5%, well, sorry, not 2.5%, a quarter basis point, a full basis point, it filtering through to the mortgage market. For those people out there with a mortgage, them cuts take longer to come through. Sometimes they don't come through at all. And even if it did come down, most people are fixed in for 2, 3, 4 years anyway. So all these things have a lagging effect. All these things, take time to filter through the economy. And, things can be impacted very quickly. But all these things take a long time to unwind. And, unless the banks are behind what the governments are trying to, because when COVID came, it's like, well, fuck it. Interest rate 0. Go out and buy houses, buy whatever you want. Debt's free. Go. That's your prize of sitting in your house and banging your pots and pans with NHS like a fucking demented seal. So that's your prize. Go and buy some shit. 5 years later, shit, things are expensive. Don't know, not my problem. Sorry, I can't pay that. It's too expensive. Hold on, the house I bought, that Airbnb, can't do Airbnb anymore. It's going to tax me. It's not profitable. And it's gone down 100 grand. Don't care, pay me. No one forced you to do it. Yeah, money was cheap. Yeah, money goes cheap, money goes expensive. Make it cheap again. No, I don't want to. Yeah, but inflation. Might lose my job.
Oh.
Not my problem. No one made you do it. Oh, but the banks lend me it. What's just so the banks would lend you it? You should take it. Oh, I didn't think about that. Oh, you don't think. Because, you don't think like I do. You haven't been doing this stuff for 20 odd years. You're not in the same headspace as me. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. So we're in a lot of situations like that, I guess. And again, this happens with the stock market as well, mate. And what we're seeing is I think is a demographic shift. We put a lot of wealth in one generation to take it. There's this great wealth transfer between the boomers and millennials and all that kind of stuff. It ain't going to happen. So we just have to get used to that. It'll be a great redistribution will happen before that, because everyone that's in can't sell. Okay, so you don't want to sell your house or your investment house because that pays your bills. You don't want to sell your stocks because they keep getting up. So all you have is paper money, paper wealth. Okay, might have some money in the bank, or you've been told to keep less money in the bank because interest rates coming down. Won't get that growth, won't be inflation. So keep putting it into riskier things. Well, stocks aren't risky anymore. Stocks are not a risky asset. They're safe because they'll only go up. And house prices are safe because they'll only go up. That narrative is changing. The narrative is eroding because there's less people coming up to buy said things. And, we're just getting to points where price is unaffordable for pretty much everything. Want to buy a gold bar? Can't afford it. Want to buy, a house? Can't afford it. Most people living in the house they are now can't afford it. So at some point, that has to obviously shift and change. But I think a lot of people are a lot less liquid than they think. They're actually quite illiquid. And when the majority of people are right, because remember, your average guy in the street that doesn't trade is smart as fuck. They're the smartest people in the world. They bought a house and it went up because it was near a school. Or they bought a house and they put a new kitchen in. So that's why it went up 50, 60, 7%. Nothing to do with interest rates. Nothing to do with, growing populations. Because they knew it was a good area to buy in. So there's lots of people that are really, really, really smart. And lots of people that are smart put their money in stocks because they have a financial advisor that was the guy down the pub and says, buy Apple because it's only going to go up because they found some rare earth mineral in China. So they put all their excess savings in the stock market. So everyone's great. Everyone's off, having their holidays, doing the stuff and thinking, yeah, I'm really smart. Yeah, this is going to last forever. It's going to see me through my next 10, 15, 20 years of retirement. So when everyone's right, everyone's comfortable, the rich go, nah. So I can lose half my fortune in the stock market because I'm Elon Musk. I'm worth 400 billion. Shit, I'm only worth 200 billion. Nah. If you lost your net worth in a couple of days, like the great, 1929 crash, How long are you going to be able to take to recover? How many years are you going to spend on the phone speaking to your bank? Where's my money? Oh, you can't get anyone on the phone. Speak to our AI assistant. Money not here. Computer says no.
Oh, don't get me on that one. I'm old.
Yeah, I mean this
don't
is
like
the thing,
that.
mate. I don't like it either, mate. But the reality is, and again, we've kind of spun off into a slight tangent, but I'm trying to make people think is about when you talk about news, you talk about narrative, you talk about situations, is that everyone can be right for a point, everyone can be wrong for a point. There will always be a shift. We're going to see a big shift in something soon. I don't know what exactly the trigger will be. I don't know exactly what the catalyst, blame, or whatever it'll be, but something's going to happen because it always does. A recession is not 95% certain, it's 100% certain. And if you try to masquerade a recession by being proved the job data was fake, manipulating other kinds of data, and just saying stock market is a record high, everything's great, what are they trying to hide? Well, if they hit you with, oh yeah, well, it was going to be soft landing, no landing, hard landing, and then it's like recession, oh, recession's almost priced in. Oh, sorry, guys. Yeah, actually, when we went through the data, it's not a recession, it's depression. Anyway, good luck with that. We're just going to go off on our yachts for a couple of years. Everything's gone to shit. So, yeah, you just stay on hold for a couple of years and try and get your money back. And in the meantime, yeah, best of luck. Thanks for playing.
Funny enough, you're saying...
Because if I was a billionaire, mate, that's what I do.
It's funny, you're saying triggers, and you mentioned AI. I read a report last week that it was talking about the labour force and how AI is going to wipe out God knows how many different jobs. Who's going to pay for these people? Which then
I wrote it in the book.
Conversation about control. One thing, another computer does this, but you're going to do as you're told. Otherwise, you're not getting your benefit payment on Friday. But we're not
exactly right, mate.
Because you're not skilled.
And listen, AI. I know. Can't be asked going into. I know because it just isn't worth it. But it's like most things. One company will dominate and they'll make a lot of money, and the rest will fall by the wayside. But the amount of money to get AI from where it is to here, and I've been told by people a lot smarter than me, they'll know a lot more about me. That's fine. The money it takes from here to here to get it 90% is astronomical. The one to get it 91% is that. 92% is that. The amount of money that needs to be put in to get it to where it needs to be is astronomical. And then don't forget, the power that it consumes, the natural resources like water it consumes. What we're going to have to choose between powering AI or people. Why do you think, all these things are happening with the, the net zero and the green stuff? They're already talking about mini nuclear reactors being, made by Rolls-Royce. Well, where's my fucking mini nuclear reactor? I want that to power my own for free. No, fuck it, you get a windmill and some fucking solar panels.
I live in the country and they've stuck a load of them in the field over there, and it looks horrid.
Yeah, well, and it does, But look at New Zealand, the first in the world to have, kind of like, kind of not first in the world, but they got hydroelectricity, and they are a very green country. But it's just like, yeah, we'll stick some windmills up. Let's be extra green. There's only 5 million people running around here. What does it matter? But it's just like, maybe we should go nuclear. Building a nuclear power plant in New Zealand would take about 8 millennia. They can't build fucking roads, mate. They can't. They can't literally do any infrastructure.
Not living in England?
Well,
come back.
It's like England 10 years ago or something. It's like England 10, 15 years ago with people with a weirder accent. But yeah, it is what it is. At the end of the day, you have to see a lot of patterns, and I see patterns in everything. And the patterns with electricity, it's more of a control thing. Going back to being forced to have smart meters. We're already talking about in places like Australia where they want to limit the thermostat through the smart meter. For temperature control. Look at the carbon credits in Canada. Mark Carney, first non-UK person, British person to be, Chancellor of the Exchequer. Carney's going full, World Economic Forum, carbon taxes. There's lots of things happening all over the world that if you do take a step back and look at it, we're getting charged more for the basics and necessities of life. We're not getting better service. We're just getting charged more. And, companies are making record profits, stock market at record highs. But unless you're involved in that, The people that are not are losing out heavily and being taxed to subsidize it. And that's bigger picture stuff, mate. That's bigger stuff. As I say, does that affect my day-to-day trading? Short answer when we started, no. Is it things that keep me up at night? To some extent, I think about these things. I've got a 6-year-old daughter, mate. I've got some skin in the game. I'm self-aware. I'm self-protectionism, mate.
Yes.
I don't want to be forced into doing things I don't want to be doing because of some nonsense, kind of money-making scheme from the elite. And remember, I know the elite. I know multi-billionaires. Yeah, and they don't give 2 flying fucks about me, mate. And sure as shit, they'll go fuck about you.
Right.
So when you talk about that kind of stuff, there is a big club. I ain't in it. And there is a big agenda. And, the more and more we're forced into the fear side of the narrative, will more tax save the planet? Who knows, mate? We haven't been able to fix anything in this country for a long time. But you give them enough money, they can fix the weather. Don't know, tough pill for me to swallow that, I'm afraid.
I don't know. I mean, you touched on your kid. I mean, I worry about my grandkids.
Yep.
And I work hard, and my legacy might look after them because I've done okay. But I don't know what kind of world they're going to have.
Well, it won't be the world we grew up in, mate.
No, I grew up and I was kind of free.
Free-range, mate. That's where we were. Out on your bikes, mate. You were out when it was light. You were back when it was dark. Playing football, knocking around with your friends. There wasn't this constant screen time. It was just you just went out and you socialized. And what I see again, there's more narratives coming in. For these ideas that we're going to be much more living in smaller zones and not really kind of going out. Why are they closing all the pubs, mate?
Well, is that
that's a choice.
I mean, are you touching
that's
on
a
the
choice.
15-minute city?
We can do, I mean, that's something
that sort of thing where you stay within a confined area of 15 minutes.
Well, it's true because every single council in New Zealand has signed up to it. There's a fucking website that says 15-minute cities. And these are other things, that I've got involved slightly in politics. I was going to go into politics, but I can't because I'm not a citizen. I'd have to be here for another year to be a citizen. So I can't actually run for any kind of, office. So I've been speaking to people, that are friends of mine and politicians and councillors, etc. And it's like, yeah, it's again, no one talks about it because it's like, oh, it's tinfoil hat stuff. It's like, well, there's every council signed up to it, and there's a website called that, and they talk about it. It's like, yeah, but that's something else. Well, how is it something else when they're talking about it and they signed up to it? So, yeah, unfortunately, when you look at again. I'm going to say in tinfoil hat, you look at the 5G towers. I could barely make a phone call to my neighbor, right? On my mobile phone. And it says 5G on the phone. Why can I make a phone call? What are these towers for? Why are they in a grid? Why did they simultaneously go up everywhere in every country after COVID or during COVID? What is that for? And then, what your lower environment zones in America in London, what are they? ULEZ or whatever they're called. Just another tax. Yeah, another tax. Cameras.
Supposed to be for clean air.
Yeah.
But the same amount of cars are going in, they're just charging you for it now.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden there's roads you can't go down. Well, you can't go down that road anymore. Or you have to go round in a circle. Oh, right, yeah. No, so they're not trying to keep you in a confined area. It's all, I think this decade's going to be, well, there won't be any history, you see, after AI superpower comes in and nobody uses Google anymore and there's no more books because they're all online and been burnt because everyone's turned into a fucking Nazi. Or there'll just be AI. There'll be your own AI.
This weekend.
Maybe, mate. Maybe. But it's like
you
get on your phone and you go, hello, AI. What happened in 1066? Well, Steve, for your version of history, this is what happened. That's what your version of history is. Are you sure? Yes. Well, I spoke to my friend and his version of AI history is different. Well, they are wrong. Also, they've been docked 10 credits and they can't go on their phone for 3 days.
Like I think we go more down into George Orwell 1984 with this conversation. Which was considering we started off with, buy this book.
Yeah, exactly. Well, maybe buy his book, mate, because there's a lot of truths coming through in that. And Yeah, I mean, I think we span off, and I think the main kind of, bringing it back to a trading, kind of idea is you have to be open-minded. You have to be able to think about things in a bigger picture way, and then almost discard it. Because almost like economics for me, when we started doing quantitative easing, to infinity, and every country around the world did it, the economic laws, the principles remain the same, but how they affected the market stopped kind of making the same, kind of impact. So, you kind of you're raising interest rates to control inflation. Didn't have the same impact. It didn't have the same economic impact as it would have done before. And that's the cycles change. So it's more moving into that more narrative that you buy the stock market, not because price earnings are good or companies are more profitable. It's because that's where the money's going. And that's where, the narrative and the direction and the aim of, the market is to go higher. So it's not necessarily about proving that you're the smartest economist or you have, the best grasp on, kind of economic principles. It's putting that to one side and going, well, that's not as reliable as just buying Trump saying, hey, buy the stock market, it's great. That's more powerful in this particular cycle we're going through, an instance of trading the markets. So yeah, it's hard to think like that because people don't like that. People want to believe that they understand and doing things the right way. Whereas, maybe that just doesn't or isn't the most profitable way to be a trader. So yes, thinking about big picture things won't necessarily help you or make you sleep better at night, but being able to think in a way that, markets aren't behaving in a rational manner, they can behave in a more rational manner than you can stay solvent in a bad position. Can't remember who said that quote exactly. I didn't make that up. Someone else more famous than me said that. So yes, the basic premise is that markets are changing. You've got to act accordingly.
I mean, and just from a trade, because we've been banging on for an hour or so, is that the difference between a pro and a retail? And I know it's like a generic question, but what I'm driving at is we're looking at the same data, we're looking at the same chart, we know what time the economic data is coming out. So essentially, professional, retailer, they're looking at the same thing. But the retailer gets it wrong so much, whereas the pro guy, he's still looking at the same chart, same time frame, knows the time. He's got a bigger world picture of narrative, whereas the other one's reactive, and it's reactive on emotion. Oh my God, it's moving! I'm going to get in. The other one knows why he's getting in.
Exactly, and it's all down to again being conditioned, being experienced, and having your business plan, having your goals, being able to make money, and be able to deal with making money. Okay, traders look at risk. Professional traders look at risk differently than retail traders, and professional traders look at making money in a different way than retail traders. Okay, so once you've made money trading, and this, because you've made money trading, and once you've made money, you don't have to chase money as much. It's there, and you can make it. Whereas retail traders always want to chase and make money because they think that's what the pros do. Pros don't. Sometimes the pros will sit out and miss something rather than get in and try and risk money when it's not the right opportunity to make money. Okay, so you can only do that when you've made money trading. You can only do that and understand that. Most retail traders never get out the doom loop of learning. They have no idea what a real trader does, and that's what I tried to mash into that pro retail trader. That was the transition from the rough guide to trading. 10 years later, the pro retail trader, to say that I don't trade like a pro trader because I don't have direct market access or tools. I trade as a pro retail trader who's someone that makes money that could justify doing it for a living. Because the retail traders are still just trading either for interest to prove something works. They never actually got the point of ever making any meaningful money to make it worthwhile doing. And that stat has never changed in retail. The traders that don't make it.
Because one of the struggles I have, I look after a small group of guys. And to paraphrase you, be right at the right time. And that's because you'll wait for the proper opportunity. Whereas
it's the right time for you, Gary.
Yes. But what I'm saying is what I struggle with the guys is they want to be pressing the button all the time. They think the money is made because you're in the market pressing the button, looking for the perfect entry. Well, it doesn't exist. But the perfect time does.
Yep.
Is the market ready to give me what it wants? No, my theory on that is if I get the direction right, it'll forgive a bad entry, and then I can stage into it to a point where I'm maybe it's wrong here, so I've got to get out. But they don't think like that. They just think, right, it's 8 o'clock. The market's just moved. Bang.
Not fastest finger first, mate, and that's the whole thing that I kind of hit down. The difference between pro traders is you'll spend 3,000-4,000 quid a month to have desk and that millisecond of timing. That's fastest finger first. That world's even gone for the pro traders to some extent, I think. Because the algorithms are just quicker. So yeah, for a retail trader, it ain't about fastest finger first. Whatever, that's just nonsense. You might see a move and then 30 seconds later, a minute later, get the tail end of it. That's fine. Or you might wait for the first 5 minutes to print, do a retracement or continuation. That's fine. But if you're trying to be fastest finger first, your edge is zero as a retail trader. Zero. So just don't do it. And again, I've tried to battle the markets. Yeah.
Because that's what I was driving at the end, like, because it's kind of the end of your time, because I don't take it up. But inside that book, that's what comes across. Look at the market, look what it's doing, but be very mindful of what it's doing. Don't chase the sudden thing.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is telling people what not to do from experience. A lot of it is just telling people that, I don't have all the answers either. A lot of it is, asking the difficult questions of yourself and trying to tie it in with some kind of life quotes or stages where you are in your life, on stages where you can take bigger risks, stages where you do want to invest in yourself, and stages where you do want to do something for a name. What we find is, again, with the kind of the disproportionate access to money and wealth between the generations, people could start a business in the 20s and 30s, get loans and do stuff. They can't do that now because they're too indebted. So you get a lot of people that have had money and have money to trade with, but they don't have the same desire to make money because they have money. So it's not the same desire as a younger person wants to make money from trading because they're at a different point in their life. And again, I go through that. The two different examples of traders that I've mentored.
Is that not personality trait as well? Because I know as a young man, I was very ambitious and I did quite well. And kind of in the blue chip company I worked with, it was like a Game of Thrones because it used to assassinate each other every other week. The internal politics was horrendous. And that's why I set off on my own and sort of last 25 years, I thought, right, I'm going to work for myself. Right. But I had that understanding. I had that drive, but it was kind of built into me that I knew how to grow it. Whereas I talk to my kids, like my sort of younger ones, they have a microwave culture. They want it and they want it now. So suddenly they see trading as an easy route to very fast money. And you try and explain, well, it's not. First of all, you need money to make money. So if you haven't got it, you've got to build it up. And then if you have got it, you've got to protect it. And they don't grab it. They just want it now. Well, that's
I mean, maybe that's a generational thing again. Maybe it's down to, a lot of it comes down to you're either someone who can go out on your own, think for yourself and do things for yourself. And, like we talked off camera, maybe that's nature or nurture. Maybe it's in you. Maybe it's the way you're brought up. I don't know, mate. I don't have all the answers. And this is why I didn't make, the second book. Hey, everyone can make money trading. I was very honest. And it opens up and says, if you ain't got 25 grand to stick in an account, you probably won't be able to trade for a living. Oh, by the way, you'll never be a pro trader. But, the good news, if you put some money in and, you spend time learning, you can lose it all. Or you could double it and still make less than someone that works at McDonald's. Fucking hell, Steve, cheer up. What do you want from me? Sorry, I can only tell you the truth. So I'm after serious people that can do serious things, can back themselves, believe in themselves and do something, and they're few and far between. And as I say, I wrote the book because I could, mate. I don't give a shit if people won't read it or not. I don't care if people buy it or not. I make £1 a book, if I'm lucky, with the algorithm on Amazon. So I don't care, mate. I don't care. I might just put it on online and give it for free, get sued by my publisher. I don't care. I don't. Why would I care, mate? Why would I care? Why I could sell 10,000 books, and that's not even one trade for me. It's just all the effort I put into it wasn't for me. It was maybe a touch of ego that I had something to say, wanted to kind of leave as a legacy or leave behind. I had things I wanted to say, and I told you this because I sent you my book you know, I sent you my book, so I wanted you to read it before other people because we've chatted and I respect your opinion. And I said, like, it's not what you think it's going to be. And I said, I had things I wanted to say, and I put them in there, warts and all. I put them in there about what I think, how I've seen myself, how I've progressed and as a trader, my shortcomings as a trader, my shortcomings as a man, my kind of thoughts about the world in general, that, you know, the markets in general. There's a lot of things I wanted to say because I did.
Yeah.
So, as I say, you know,
No,
is it the best?
well, I suppose the next question is, because yes, we've gone on a tangent tonight on big world thinking. Your view on the market is quite unique in the trading world, I would say, because it is straight down the line. This is the way it is, like it or not. So is there a third book, but on big world thinking, world economics?
I mean,
go on, Steve, you can do it.
Oh, yeah, go on, Steve. It's like that scene from Extras, isn't it? When Ricky Gervais is like to David Bowie. You know, just knock up a song for me, a little jingle, a bit like Space Oddity. And David Bowie's like, fucking yeah, all right. I'll just knock up a Space Oddity for you. It's like, all right, yeah, I'll just spend another few years, you know, writing about, yeah, I mean, I don't know, mate. I don't know. I mean, I'm talking to other people who've written books and, you know, people that are other traders. I might do a collaboration. I might do something. I don't know. If I did, I'd self-fucking publish. I know that for sure. But anyway, but I don't know, mate.
Because you do have quite, I am going to say it again, a unique view of the market. Because if you listen,
I have a unique view on life, I think.
Don't talk like you.
No, they don't. They don't because they can't. Because they get fired or they'll get, you know, unfollowed or someone will tell them off. There ain't no one to tell me off.
Well, that's why I like always coming on here because I'm unfiltered. I swear, like when I drink
exactly
Navi.
Yeah, well, that's why I like it, Gary. You know, because I'm not trying to be anyone else that I'm not. Sometimes I'm interviewed. You know, I put on, you know, more sensible Steve Ruffley, and you know, just kind of like, oh yeah, well, you know, well, I don't change my accent. I just, you know, I tone it down a bit. But you know, for you, you know, it doesn't matter. You know, it's I know I can speak freely and open with you, and I'm just trying to have a conversation. There's no sales pitch from me. There's no agenda from me. I just want to have a genuine chat, and yeah, we go off on tangents. That's how chat goes. Yeah. You know, there are lots of things happening in the world. There are lots of things that people just aren't aware of and don't want to be aware of. And if you're going to make it in the world of trading, the way you consume information, the way most people are oblivious to narrative, you know, it's you have to turn it on its head. I don't know if it's going to help you as a trader. I don't know if it'll make you a happier person. That's for sure. And I don't know what it will do for you. But if you don't factor it in to some degree, you don't understand it, there's going to be a big part of your trading missing. Or it could be completely wrong, mate. Just do exactly what they tell you and just do exactly what, you know, buy your Bitcoin, buy your stocks. Yeah. So guarantee it'll keep doing exactly what they say forever. And you'll make your millions, you know, you'll be driving around in your Lambo, you'll be fine. So I'm sure that's exactly worked for absolutely everyone, always, ever, hasn't it?
Well, of course it has, because it was on TikTok.
So exactly, it mate. True. It must be true. All I'm saying is trading's quite a real thing. It's a personal thing, and you've got to ask yourself a lot more difficult questions in your own head because you're the main part. You're the main event in trading. You know, as you said rightly, we all see the same information. We all, you know, see the same charts, same time frames. So what's the USP? What's your USP? That might be anything from your ability to, I don't know, like I said, translate narrative or excellent risk reward or fast execution, whatever the fuck. It doesn't really matter. It's you. So you've got to find what you're good at because if you don't, trading will just eat you up and keep eating you up. Yeah. The more knowledge you have, gets to a point where if it isn't utilized in the right way, being smart and knowing more won't help you. It just won't. Trading's a personal, brutal thing, and you've got to ask yourself a lot of tough questions and keep going forward, doing the right things, and, you know, learning from when you do the wrong things. And it takes time, as you say. And yeah, at the end of it, the fail rate for traders, I would say retail traders, is probably no different than the old kind of pro, like grad schemes I went on. You know, there's no real edge apart from what's in you.
Yeah. I think sometimes
that really is what it comes down to.
Information's damaging to.
It is. I think it is because, you know, where do you stop? Where do you stop?
Because I see a lot of people talk about fundamentals as retail traders.
Yeah.
And they ask me what my opinion is and say, I haven't got one.
Yeah.
Because I'm not in the room. I didn't hear the conversation. Unless, and I'm one of these that's black and white, where you know that it's either right or it's wrong. Well, I don't try to look what's in the middle, but that's just my personality trait.
Exactly.
But when I see them chitter and chattering on, I'm always thinking, well, how do you know? Were you in the room?
This is it. Exactly right, man. So yeah, I mean, this is the thing. You know, it's good to have these kind of conversations because it makes people think, and you don't have to take any of it on board. You can ignore everything that's been said today because maybe some of it isn't relevant to you, maybe it isn't important to you, whatever. It doesn't really matter what anyone else thinks. All that matters is what the reason is why for you pressing that button. And you press it once to get in and once to get out. No one cares. As long as you make money, no one cares. And no one's really watching you. This is the thing. It's you against you. You want to tell people you did this and made all this money, great. Or you'll tell them they lost. No one really cares, mate. 80% of people, don't give a shit about your problems. The other 19% are glad you've got them. There's only 1% of people that give a shit.
Well, I found that out the hard way. 2017, I lost my factory. I lost £1 million in a week. Well, just shy of $1 million in a week. In the golf club prior, it's always taught that lad worth a fortune. Week the company went shut. It was an idiot him. We knew it was going to go bust. And I'm like thinking, I was managing director for 17 years. So you knew for 17 years it was going to go tits, did you?
This is it, mate.
And that's it. People like to see it and they take on their own narrative. But the difference is somebody like me, like you, if you like, if you get a knock like that, you've got two options. You either sit in that corner and suck your thumb, or you roll your sleeves up and say, sorry, I'm going to get it. And in 6 years, I got the whole lot back.
Yep, exactly, mate.
Just by putting a bit of graft in. But it comes from my personality trait, what we were talking on earlier on. I know what it is to build something.
And this is the problem you see with trading is everyone's got the answer. Oh, this book, this course, this changed my life, this indicator. You can have as many screens as you want, as many books as you want under your belt. Are you going to be able to press that button for 100 lot trade, 1,000 lot trades? No. You will just stay exactly where you are with all that knowledge. Okay? Because it really comes down to what you do with it. And most retail traders won't do anything with the time that they've invested. They've invested a lot of screen time, a lot of learning time to do what? To hold a one lot for 100 pips to make 300 quid. Whoop-de-doo. Well done. What's it all for? Well, it ain't for that, mate, is it? But anyway, as I say, brutal honesty with me. That's what the book tried to kind of, push out, this idea you've got to push yourself and be a bit more realistic. If you're going to be buying your Lambos, mate, you ain't going to be doing that on your fucking 2-lot DAX trade. That's just the way it is.
No, we don't have Lambos on this channel. It's Range Rovers and Mercedes, I'm afraid.
That's all good, mate. That's all good. Yeah.
But it's been an absolute pleasure. And do you know something? I love these raw chats with you. I genuinely do.
Do you know what, Gary? Like, I'm the same, mate. Yeah, I don't have a lot of people that I can just talk open and honestly with and not really kind of care how it's perceived. Because it's not really for anyone. This, if I'm being honest, it's just a chat between me and you. There's very few people I do that with. Because it's people can get the wrong idea that just because you're thinking a different way that
But they shouldn't. They should respect your knowledge. That's the point.
Yeah, I mean, you have to.
I mean, let's be honest. If we come to a technical trading point of view, I've known you long enough to know that what you don't know about a technical trade, you can write on the back of a postage stamp.
I think it's the northern thing, right? Because the northern thing, people think we're thick because we're northern. And when you talk northern and openly with other northern people, they think you're fucking stupid. So yes, when I'm on kind of chat with traders, these big podcasts, I do talk in a slightly different way, in a slightly different manner, because I don't want people to think, it's just some northern monkey. Whereas this, we could be sat down in the pub having this chat. We still made more money than most people around there ever would in their lives, but I'm not there for that. I'm there to have a chat. I'm there just to talk about things. You know, I'm not there to kind of, you know, be around some swanky London wine bar, you know, like, you know, going like, I've got my kettle on there, apples and pears. Fuck off, fucking stupid
That's
commies.
why I'm never invited back on these podcasts.
Yeah, that's it, mate. That's it, isn't it? You know, you've got to kind of play the game to a certain extent, you know.
No, but no, it's been an utter pleasure, Steve. It really has. Do the third book. Go on. Be an exclusive. Do it.
All right, mate. I'll give you some thought.
I'll take a cruise over to New Zealand. I'll buy you a drink, and that'll pay for it.
All right, mate.
But no, just for anybody, do read this, because what he's been talking about tonight, bearing in mind that book took a while to be wrote. It's almost like a time machine, because there's a lot in that book bears much relevance as to what's happening today. So do read it, and it'll give you a different slant on what trading is. And if you ever want to speak to somebody who doesn't know it, Steve's the man.
Cheers, Gary.
No, you're very welcome. I really appreciate it. Thanks very much, Steve.
Anytime, mate. Anytime. Thanks.
Okay.